Something I've started doing recently that I found really, really beneficial for me when I learn a language, and probably for you if you're also trying to learn a language, is to incorporate a weekly test into my language learning routine. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about how I use weekly tests, what are they, and how they actually benefit me in learning Russian, but it could apply to any language that you're learning. And if you stick around to the end, I'm also going to give you a bonus tip to make even more progress. So let's talk about why weekly tests are actually important to improvement. So as far as improvement goes, no matter what you're trying to improve in, but I think this especially applies to language learning, there are effectively two parts: acquiring and testing. Those are the only two parts to language learning. So acquiring, if we put this into the metaphor of kind of a statue, acquiring would be putting the rocks together, and then testing would be kind of chiseling the statue and making sure it actually holds. When it comes to language learning, acquiring is kind of like learning the skills in the language. So by skills, I mean learning the words, learning the grammar rules, being good at pronunciation, getting faster at being able to listen and speak, etc. And then there's also the second part, which is testing, to actually discover discover's the wrong word, sorry. Testing to see where your weak spots are, what you're not good at in the language you're learning, and really just to see what you need to improve upon to become better and to get closer towards your goals. So now that we understand that testing is actually important when it comes to language learning, because you need to be able to know what your weaknesses are so that you can ultimately move towards your goal. How do we actually do this? So most people do kind of test themselves in the language they're learning, and they do this by consuming content or by producing content. So what I mean by that, if you have watched these videos before, by consuming content, I mean reading or listening, and by producing, I mean speaking and writing. So those things are kind of tests in and of themselves, because if you're incapable of doing something, obviously you've proven to yourself that that's a weak spot. And this is really good. You should keep doing that. If you're doing any of those things, you should continue to do that. However, I would highly, highly recommend you start doing actual tests, like tests where they ask you questions, and I'll give you some examples of tests on the next slide, but I would highly recommend you start doing these as well. And there are four main reasons why you should do this. The first reason is weak spots, and although we agreed that doing the above things is already identifying weak spots, it's not the only way you can do that. So when you do a test like this here we go. Oh, I don't have it, sorry. I don't have a picture, I thought I did. When you're doing a test, for example, it asks you 10 questions and you have to identify which word is grammatically incorrect or whatever, something like that. That is actually testing you on a specific skill. It's testing whether you understand the grammar of the language. And if you prove that you don't and that you get a bunch of questions wrong, you've then identified a weakness that could very well be identified through speaking, but you've actually targeted this weakness and proven specifically that this variable doesn't work. Whereas when you're speaking, there could be a bunch of different problems, and it could be more difficult to identify clearly what the actual problem is, because I think a lot of people, when they they mess up a sentence or whatever, they just get frustrated that they can't speak rather than actually problem solving. So definitely weak spots is important, and once you actually discover these weak spots, you can do what I call, and what I've started doing, is a weakness to-do list. So you can get a page of your language learning notebook, and you can like literally name it weakness to-do list, and every time you encounter a problem, you can write it down. And so that way, if you don't know what to do, you've got a page that you can literally look at and tick off as you solve these problems. Like for me, for example, I didn't understand the Russian pronoun katari, it's kind of hard to explain. It doesn't have a direct translation in English, but it's I kind of knew how to use it, but I didn't understand the rules 100%, so I studied it more, and now I'm better at it. That's a random example. The second reason, and I'll go quicker now, is because it gauges your level. So when you're testing yourself, you can take a test that might be, for example, an A2 test. It might not be specific to grammar or to vocab. It just might be a test that people at this level of the language should be able to complete. And obviously, if you find it very difficult, you can kind of gauge how good you are compared to that number. Obviously, it's an arbitrary level, A2 or B1 or whatever, but it can be nice to know where you actually are, specifically if you set a goal of like reaching C1 level or something like that. But that's not as important of a reason, but I'll continue. The third reason is because it improves your understanding. So not only will you make mistakes and stuff when you're taking tests, but it will actually provide you the opportunity to learn, and then you'll better understand the things that you're getting wrong. And oftentimes these tests will actually tell you what the correct answer is, and even better, they'll tell you why that's the correct answer, so that rather than just rope learn, you're rope learning and you're getting additional information to help you become better at the language. And the fourth reason is because of the one master principle. And side note, I made a video on the one master principle ages ago. You can see how bad it is compared to my more recent videos. It got 21 views after 11 months. You can see how terrible the thumbnail is. But it was actually a very good video, apart from the sound quality and everything being bad. So I will link it below. It is an older video though. But yeah, for fun, I just wanted to compare it to my more recent videos. Look at the thumbnail difference. Look at the view difference, 12,000 views. That's obviously my best video so far. But yeah, I just thought it was funny comparing it. Anyway, the one master principle is basically the idea that if you only learn from one person, you'll pick up all of their problems, and you'll also pick up any like little idiosyncrasies or quirks, or just little speech things that they do. You'll pick those up as normal rather than understanding that they're kind of a bit different. So for example, if someone always uses the same sayings and you only learn from them in a foreign language, you're going to use those sayings a lot. And I've seen this happen with people. I probably do it myself in other languages a little bit. Obviously, it's hard to know. It's hard to look at yourself and reflect on that. But this does happen. So it's good to take tests, because when you're exposing yourself to a bunch of different tests, it allows you to see how different people communicate in different ways. And yes, obviously you can do this with speaking as well, but it's just good to do it with tests, because you can see if one test marks something correct and the other test marks something incorrect and it's exactly the same thing, you can see, okay, was I wrong? Is one of the tests wrong? Or is this simply a dialectical thing? And it gives you a kind of better understanding. So that's one other reason I call it the one master principle, that I think it's good. And I will have that video pop up at the end if you want to watch that, because it is a really good video. But if you stuck around until the end, I'm going to give you a bonus tip, which is to change how you visualize how good you are. So I think the way you visualize progress is super important for making progress. The way a lot of people do visualize progress at the moment is they see just how good they are in the language overall. So for example, if you're learning Italian, you would just have you would have an opinion of how good you are in Italian overall. And that's great. You can have an opinion like that, but I think it's more it's not as blunt as that. It's a bit different. So the way it actually works is you have a level of skill in listening, you have a level of skill in speaking, you have a level of skill in writing, etc., and all of these different grammatical things below, and to infinity. There are many topics and skills within the language you're learning, and you have different levels of skill in each of them. Although you might be very basic in Italian, for example, you might have perfect skills as far as articles goes to. If you've memorized Italian articles like il, la, le, I, lo, li, le, un, una, uno, un. Like if you've memorized all the articles and you know how to use them, and you can use them fairly quickly and you can use them accurately, you might have mastered that skill to a level almost at a native speaker. It's just that because there's so many skills within the language to become better at, that overall you might not be particularly good at Italian if you're still new at it. So just something to think about. Don't think that you're bad in a language. Just establish where your strengths and weaknesses are. Be happy that you have actually mastered some skills in the language to a near native level, even though there might only be a few different skills and they might not be particularly difficult, like for example Italian articles. And I know someone's angry I said not particularly difficult, but overall it's only one topic that's not very hard once you learn it. So yeah, and yeah, just identify where your weaknesses are. Do what I said on the previous page with the weakness to-do list, and you'll be gold. You'll make progress. And if you do want to make progress in a language, definitely check out the Language Learning Accelerator below. But guys, that is the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and thank you for watching.